So I want you to get ready for insights and stories about mentorship, leadership, and the power of positive influence from someone who has captivated audiences worldwide and transformed countless lives.
Thank you for tuning in to Fortify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.
So today we have a very special guest on Fortify Live who is not only a keynote speaker and a celebrated author, but also an Emmy Award-winning and professional drummer. Now, he's captivated audiences around the globe with his dynamic presentations on leadership, employee retention, and the transformative power of mentorship. So I want you to join me in welcoming an incredible Clint Pulver to the show. Now, we're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. So, Clint, it's an absolute honor to take your time. I know I had a little trouble in the green room, so I'm glad you were patient for me. And I want you to start off by telling us how you got started with drumming and how that inspired you to make a message that organizations need to hear.
It's a great question. I'm honored to be here, Ford. Thanks for having me on. I've been a professional drummer for 25 years. It started back when I was in the 5th grade. I was the kid that always had a hard time sitting still. I still have a hard time sitting still. I would just constantly move and tap, and everybody saw the issue. They saw this problem, except for one individual, and his name was Mr. Jensen, my 5th grade teacher. And he told me to stay after class. I thought I was going to get kicked out of school as a 10-year-old. And instead, he pulled me to the back of the room and he said, listen, you tap a lot. You're constantly moving. I see as you write with your right hand, you tap with your left hand, then you switch the pen and you write with your left hand and you tap with your right hand. And he said, I don't think you're a problem. I just think you're a drummer. And he reached back in his desk and he opened up the top drawer and he reached inside and he took out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he put them in my hands and he said, listen, kid, I have no idea what's going to happen, but just keep the sticks in your hands. And that was a moment in time that changed the course of forever for me. And for 25 years, I've toured and recorded all over the world and played with some amazing artists. And my whole college education was paid for because of music. I've been on America's Got Talent. I've done some really fun and significant things because one person decided to take a problem and turn it into an opportunity. And that's what we talk about to organizations. We talk about how do we see the opportunities and instead of seeing all of the things that are not right. And sometimes in a world where you're constantly reminded of all of the difficulties, all of the frustrations, you watch the news for 5 minutes, you scroll on social media for 5 seconds, this world will tell you all of the things that are not right. But when we have leadership that focuses on the good, the positive, the potential, the worth of individuals to the point where they see it within themselves, we change the narrative. And then we combine that with my research as the Undercover Millennial, where I would go undercover into organizations, and we found the truths behind how great leaders were creating organizations that their people never wanted to leave. And we segue that with the Mr. Jensen story, and we create the ultimate experience that helps leaders create a place that people never want to leave.
Well, now, if you're listening right now on the Business Growth, because this also is the Business Growth podcast, we're talking to Clint Pulver. He's an Emmy Award winner and, keynote speaker. I'd say beyond that, entertainer and an expert in the field. You can find him at clintpulver.com. That's CLINTPULVER.com. So I just want to make sure that shows up if you're listening versus watching. So, you said something that, one person gave you something that changed the course of your career. For me, I was 15 years old, sitting in a jail cell, 6 foot by 8 foot, thinking to myself, maybe I haven't made the best life choices up to this point. And one of the guards gave me a cassette program from Napoleon Hill. And I know the millennials, you probably don't know what a cassette is, but you can Google it, Clint. But anyway, I got this cassette program and it basically changed my life because it gave me new insights, new ideas. And now I know you've built a whole career on that, on showing people how to transform. And you work with big companies and small companies. You work in B2B, B2C, and every aspect of that, whether it's working with a strategic board on their vision. So tell me more about this Undercover Millennial thing, because that sounds really exciting. Like, Because I know I mystery shop sometime, and whenever I'm hired to speak, I mystery shop the audience, but I've never really done anything undercover like that. So what's that look like, and how does that work when, and I will just say this, to me, there's always a difference. There's this gap between what leadership thinks and what the culture of the organization thinks. So tell me more about your undercover millennial.
You couldn't be more right. I was a part of a mastermind group. This was, 6.5 years ago. And we were meeting with other CEOs and business executives. We were talking about their business, their strategy, the things they were doing in their lives and in their business and their careers to innovate, to stay ahead of everything. And I asked one of the CEOs of a large sporting retail store. We're in his storefront, a beautiful store. And I said, do you feel like the way you manage today is the same way you managed 20 years ago? And he said, oh, absolutely. He's like, there's no need to change. He said, we get results. Everybody's happy here. The proof's in the pudding. And I thought, interesting. Because in business, you know this, Ford, you have to constantly adapt. You have to constantly innovate. You have to constantly be thinking ahead. And this kind of mentality of no need to adapt when it came to people was fascinating to me. And I just remember I looked around in his store and I saw all of his employees, and they were all about my age. And at the time, I literally looked how I look today. I had a hoodie on, I was wearing a backwards hat, and I thought to myself, I wonder if they would say the same thing. I wonder if they would have the same perspective that this guy had. And so I thanked him for his time. We had 35 minutes to kill until we needed to be to the next place. So Ford, I had nothing else better to do. So I walked up to the first employee that I saw, and I just said, hey, I'm curious to know, what's it like to work here? And the employee kind of looked around, felt like an illegal drug exchange. and he said, listen, dude, it's probably one of the worst jobs I've ever had in my life. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, dude, I've already applied to 3 other places. Every one of us, man, we're just a number, dude. It's just a job. And then I went to the next employee and the next and the next. And in the time that I had, I interviewed 6 of his employees. And out of those 6 conversations, 5 out of those 6 team members said they would not be working for him and his store in less than 3 months. And it was a light bulb moment, because just like you said, Ford, the perception of leadership versus the reality of the employee experience is usually different. There's a gap. Why? Well, because there's no incentive for an employee, especially when things aren't going right, to walk up to a boss and say, hey, listen, Fred, I think this could help you. Every time we win as a team, you take all the credit. Oh, also, I thought this could help you. Every time we lose as a team, you blame everybody else. Happy Tuesday, Fred. Like they don't tell you that. They're not going to say that. So instead, what do the employees do? They leave. They leave, or worse, they mentally check out and then they stay. And that was the foundational moment when I realized, man, because of my age, because in the environment, the way that we could do this, I was not a manager. I wasn't an employee survey. I was just another millennial. And I could go in and capture the truths. And we've now done that with 198 organizations. And as of this year, I've interviewed over 11,000 employees undercover. I'll never do it again. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. But we captured some really unique things, because the magic of all of that research, Ford, was not when an employee was dissatisfied with their job. The magic was found when I would go undercover into an organization and I would say, what's it like to work here? And they would respond with, I love it here. I love it here. And then why? What kept them there? What engaged them? Why did they like themselves best? Because they were working there. And we decided to write a book about it. And that's why I titled the book, I Love It Here: How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Want to Leave.
Well, that's so amazing. For me, I've had 17 different companies, and I was that guy. I mean, for years, I had a sporting goods company. I grew it up to 140 employees, and I always had all this turnover, right? So I'd go to my mastermind buddies and I'd be bitching about, I can't find good people and no one wants to work. And one of my mastermind buddies looked over to me and said, hey, Ford, I have a question for you. Who's always at the scene of the crime? It was actually Randy Gage who said it. He said, who's always at the scene of the crime? What's the one common denominator in all this turnover? Is it really you can't get good people? Now that was, 25 years ago. And since that time, I've had to learn about leadership and management and team building and culture and communication and change. I had to learn some things that I wasn't strong in. So I was clueless. And thank God, I had smart people that told me the truth of what was going on. Because every time I interview an organization, because I speak on business growth and acceleration, leadership and marketing, AI, stuff like that. And, staffing is a big part. People always want to know, how do you find them? How do you attract them? How do you engage them? How do you keep them? How do you reduce attrition and increase retention? And so that whole, what you're doing is so spot on. And I've talked to a lot of people who so-called do this, but most of them are doing a book report because they've read a book and they talk about it, where someone like you, who's actually a millennial, that's actually seen the insights, that has that thought leader. I would call it research-based thought leader. Like, you've done the research, you've been there. Not only have you lived it, but you understand it at an unconscious competency. And so for me, seeing what you're doing is just so amazing, because everybody who's listening to this now, whether you're watching live or listening to the podcast, every organization struggles with this, and people don't leave their company. It's usually not about pay. They leave their managers, or they leave their culture. And so, for me, and then that's just what I've learned, because I was on the other side of the table. I was losing the employees, right? And I would pay them more money. I'd be like throwing money at them. And then I would read a book on 1,000 ways to reward your employees, but it wasn't authentic. There was no empathy. It wasn't real. And so I did lunch and learns, and we did all these programs, but it wasn't until I actually stood back and got some great leadership training from someone like you, and the resources and the training and the culture to understand how to change my behavior. And when I changed my behavior, my retention went up. If you were to mystery shop, my team went up. And I have employees that have left bad reviews on Glassdoor. In my agency, I fired someone because they were embezzling, but I know they went to Glassdoor and it said, what was the best day? What was the best thing about working at Prime Concepts? That was my agency. And the person wrote, the day I left, the owner is psychotic. He's crazy. He ought to be, arrested. Like, it was just crazy stuff. But I realized that, you can influence the employees, but your culture is really what the employees think. So, how do you help an organization where that leader thinks it's their team? Like, for example, I'm going to set the stage.
Yeah.
So in training, most clients don't know the difference between leadership, management, team building, communication, change, or culture, right? They throw these words around. Like for me, I thought I needed team building, right? So when I hired everybody on team building, they're like, no, you're a jerk. You need to change your onboarding, your communication style, and all that. So what do you do when you have a client who thinks they know what the problem is, but they really don't have a clue?
Yeah. One thing, the first telling, the foundational part of all of the research that was so beautiful to see, Ford, is that when people hated their jobs, they always talked about a manager.
Yep.
Oftentimes they even would talk about a leader. But when people loved their jobs, they talked about a mentor. Mentorship versus management. Very, very different. And I want to distinguish this. We talked about
please do.
Definition. The traditional definition of leadership would be somebody that stands at the helm of the ship and you cast the vision. You're the visionary. This is where we're going. This is where we need to get to. These are the 7 reasons why. Let's inspire the troops. I'm leading you to a goal, a specific result. Management is all about making sure there's no holes in the ship. How do we get there effectively, faster, quicker? Mentorship is about taking care of people on the ship. Employees, they never really talked about the days at work. They talked about the moments when a leader or a manager became the mentor in the story, meaning that they got to the part about them. And that's a hard thing to do, because you cannot become the mentor until the mentee invites you into their heart. It has to be earned, right? We give out titles all the time in corporate America. You're the CEO, you're the exec, you're the manager, you're the district supervisor, whatever. But it's your people that decide if you're the mentor. And that's why it became the most pivotal thing. When you became the individual that people said, I like myself best because of you. I get to live a better story because of you. You're not someone that's here every day on the job just to develop me, but you're somebody that's truly striving to advocate for me. You're going to walk with me. You're high on standards. Yes, we got to be profitable. Yes, we've got a business to grow, but you also understand that I'm a person to be loved and that I have a life. I have a life, Ford, outside of work. And that's that chemistry, man. When you could become the mentor in the story, was a beautiful thing that we need more of. We need to not specifically just train on leadership or management. It is about mentorship. How do you become the individual that people actively choose? You do that, you win.
That's such sage advice. I know I've had to learn it the hard way. When I first was told, hey, you need to increase your empathy score, you need to ask them more about their life. And I was like, I don't know. I grew up with stranger danger, right? I grew up conditioned that, it's all about performance and profits and people. And it wasn't until, getting some real insights where now I ask them about, like, I've got a couple team members that are virtual, a lot of as staff internally, and where I now have questions that I asked. And as a newer leader to mentorship, I mean, I obviously understand mentorship, but as it relates to my team members, now I had a list of questions that guided me. It was amazing how they elevated their energy. They worked harder. And I don't want them to work harder. I want them to feel comfortable and enjoy the process. And so I found out that when I said to them, look, I'm a keynote speaker. I travel a lot. I might email you at 2 a.m. I do not expect you to respond. Even though I might work 24/7, I don't expect you to work 24/7. So if you're getting this email after hours, please respond when I'm writing this email to you when it's convenient to me. Please respond to it when it's convenient to you. And when I started to change that status and give people control over the outcome, as opposed to okay, you need to show up at 8:30, we work till 5. When I added that flexibility in there, the performance went way up. The communication, the happiness, there was less sick days. Way less turnover, right? I found out that I was keeping people because now, I mean, anybody can go to a website, look at the about us, and they prospect, because people get prospected all the time. And so how do you create an environment where your people really want to stay? So do you tell me a little bit about the entertainment factor? Because I know we're on a virtual here, but I know you're also known for amazing. I mean, you're in high demand. I mean, I'm surprised I even got you to carve out some day to be on the show. So thank you so much for doing that. How does entertainment carry through in your keynotes for your message that you do?
The goal for us and what we strive to do for our clients is not just give them a keynote, but to create an experience. It is an experience, Ford. It is unlike anything I've seen done on a keynote stage. And there is shock and awe and surprise and wow and the drum solo experience to literally, when we do the drum line with the entire audience, we transform a room of, it doesn't matter if it's 600 people or 6,000 people, into this live interactive drum line experience. It's one thing to talk about leadership. It's another thing to see it.
Right.
But then it's a whole nother level to actually engage in it. And it is learning by doing at its finest. And in a matter of two minutes, the whole room transforms into this unreal moment where we fall apart and everybody's got drumsticks and buckets and we're trying to communicate. We're trying to collaborate. We're trying to come together. And it's just absolute chaos. At times, it replicates their business, right? They're busy, but they're not going anywhere. And then we teach the content. We teach the research. We teach the simple but profound truths that great leaders were doing to create that culture, to create that synergy, to create a place where people didn't just survive, but they could truly thrive. And then at the end, they get to come together and choose. They apply the things that we talk about. And at the end, they create the most epic finish and moment that shows them the validity of the message, the credibility of the research, and that small little things that we can change in our lives, done consistently over a long period of time. It matters. It matters. And they walk away with not just a fun experience, not just some drumsticks, but with prescriptive ideas that are going to move the needle forward in their business. And they had an incredible experience doing that at the same time. And it's been one of the sweetest things I've ever had the chance to be a part of.
Well, I've seen you at other events before, and our paths have crossed, and I've always enjoyed, listening to you and watching you on stage, but more importantly, what other people say about you. I mean, whether it's a speakers bureau or another executive that runs across and says, "Hey, have you heard of Clint?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you've got if you've got more than 2 employees in your company, you need to have him, bring him in," because there are a lot of speakers that that again, they deliver great value, but you really do create those experiences that do transform. And it's about that experience that connects with those, all the different ages. So they don't have to be a millennial to get your message.
Right.
What I like about what you do is it really transcends a diverse audience in all different roles, whether they're in leadership, whether they're in marketing, sales, or finance, or accounting. It really transforms everything. What are you excited about for the future? I mean, you're doing this, you're in high demand, you're speaking all over the globe. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you something. Tell me a little bit about this short film that you won an Emmy for. So describe to our audiences who may not be familiar with the film. You're an Emmy Award-winning, speaker, but what was this film about?
Yeah, so the film is titled Be a Mr. Jensen. And I videofied and directed and storyboarded and casted and produced this short film that now has over 10 million views across all of the different platforms. And it's my story. It's the story of Mr. Jensen and how he took what everybody saw as an issue and turned it into a moment and an opportunity that transformed a life. And it's very short, but I'm proud of it. And it's been able to inspire so many other people to do the same. How do we advocate, not just develop? How do you see what's right in a world that's full of a lot of darkness? And so if you get the chance, go check it out. It's entitled Be a Mr. Jensen. It's on YouTube, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, so go to YouTube, type in Be Mr. Jensen. I think that's going to be, I know I haven't watched it yet, so I need to, it was in my notes pre-show, but I need to go watch it. I'll definitely do that after this episode because I'm always interested in stories. I mean, I think in Continual Learner, the scariest people to me, Clint, are those that think they know everything, but don't know what they don't know. And so being able to learn from other people and your concept of mentorship and just the way you talk about it, your passion. And what's really nice about what you're doing is it really comes from a place of just wanting to serve, right? You have a servant leadership style about you, and that's what makes you in such demand. And it also makes why you connect so authentically with the different audiences. And I know the Undercover Millennial, that's certainly not something I could do. But I think it's just a really cool concept to understand. And I think what's nice about it too, is you're able to communicate to the leadership team, regardless of their age, that gap in what they think. Cause there's always, that to me is the biggest thing is they always think they know and for me, it's in marketing, right? They'll say, well, we know who our market is and we know, and then I do the mystery shopper. We know what our culture is. I did this. I was speaking at a bank association and I said, it was community banking. And I said, well, why does someone bank at your bank versus your competition? And of course, everybody in the room said, customer experience. We offer more customer experience than Wells Fargo and Bank of America. We're all about customer experience. And so I got this person on stage and, I had a lav microphone on and I grabbed my cell phone and I said, what's your phone number to your bank? And I called them live in a hot seat and everyone in the room was totally silent. And it was this terrible customer experience. They transferred my call. They didn't ask. It was just this terrible thing. And of course, the CEO, he was getting a little bit upset with me. And I said, look, wouldn't you rather have me tell you what's going on? Now, since that time, I've worked with them for, several years, but there's this gap between, they're just delusional. Leadership gets delusional. And I think that profit hides a lot of mistakes. And I think people get conditioned. And so it's really when they can challenge it. And I think that that's really the important thing is challenging belief systems on what people think. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And there is, because perception determines reality, and whatever's real to you as a leader is influencing your behavior, and that influences the culture. And I think that's, too, you mentioned, the passion behind it. I love what I do because the thought of inspiring a leader in such a way that they might go back and become better for an individual that, because of those choices, might be able to go home and be a better mom and be a better dad because they're a little more fulfilled at work, and we can create better families, and we can create this place where you don't dread Mondays and you're not living for Fridays, and a place again where you can find significance in your work and not just success. And how do we create that synergy? And to me, that just fires me up. And it really is. It's been a journey that I pinch myself that I get the chance to be a part of it. It's been a lot of work, and we've tried our best to create quality and do the research and create the things that really will move the needle forward. And it has been a journey, but man, we're reaping the rewards of the benefits of seeing some of the success stories, seeing the cultures transform, seeing these organizations become better and a place where we're not just growing employees, but we're growing people.
Yep.
And there's nothing I'd rather be a part of.
What's on the future? I mean, as we get ready to wrap up the episode, what's on the future for you? Like, what do you see next? And again, I'd love for you to talk and throw in AI. The only reason I'm saying this is I'm doing a lot of speaking on AI right now, and of course, everybody with a laptop calls themselves an AI expert. And I approach AI from a specific purpose of, is this going to help me shorten the sales cycle, improve the communication, automate workflows, make better decisions? It's not about replacing humans. It's about replacing humans that aren't using AI. And so I look at all these things, but I'm just curious how you see the impact, because the cultures are changing, jobs are changing. We've got a whole economic and political scene that's changing. There's inflation. There's all these challenges, even more so, I think, than in prior years. So there's always been challenges. But how do you see navigating the future with all the uncertainty that's happening in organizations?
I think now more than ever, we will see an increase of the need for authenticity more than ever. People that are willing to almost step aside from the tech and get to the heart and have the conversations. And instead of trying to systemize everything and make it easier and more effective, and using, again, I'm not opposed to technology. I think it's beautiful. We saw this, Ford, in our industry in 2020 when the world fell apart and everybody dived into virtual, right? And we went into this realm of, even a year into it, people are like, it's here to stay. It's going to always be here. It's going to, and I haven't done a virtual keynote in 2 years. And I know certain keynote speakers, they still do virtual, which is great. But it put what I do, that time period, more in demand because of the experience of authenticity we create through gathering, through bringing people together. I mean, concerts and selling out arenas, like we're seeing that more and more, where people want that authentic experience. Watching Garth Brooks on a virtual Zoom call will never replace the authenticity of being in the arena.
That's right.
And I think this dynamic of AI for this, AI for this, again, there's a place for it. There's beauty there. But if it's overused and not used in a proper way, where we're trying to cut out the authenticity that we as human beings need so much, I think we're going to see a drive for that more than ever.
Yeah, for me, I present on this a lot, and I talk about the human factor being even more important than ever before. And I think I caution organizations that, yes, they can use AI, but think back to remember when those virtual automated assistants turned on, when you could dial a company and it would say, thank you for calling, please press 1 for this and press 2 for this. And, it's like you press 1 for English and the person doesn't speak English when they get on the phone. Like it's crazy, right? And I think that companies jumped on that bandwagon to create those automated assistants, but then the companies who had the personal touch that actually answer the phone. And I think that's the same thing we're going to see with AI. I think the pendulum is swinging to people are looking at how they can systemize things. But what I'm cautioning organizations on is look for the human factor, look for that personality factor where you can add that personal touch in, because that's what's going to get you the competitive edge. It's not, yes, you can use AI and technology to improve workflows, but the customer journey, if you can, it's going to make personal in audiences even more important. Like speakers have said, well, Ford, is it going to replace keynote speakers? No, I think it's only going to make it more valuable, because people are going to want to get away from the tech. They're going to want to see what's real. They're going to want to,
that's right,
be in organizations where they can see, touch, hear, see, and actually see the people. I think that, and my wife is a Pilates instructor, and I keep telling her, look, she should do these retreats for the disconnected retreat where people, they take off their iWatch, they put their cell phone in a Faraday box, and they spend the day without technology, or a weekend in a retreat, because I think that people are going to crave that. So for me, the future is going to be, it's going to swing back to anytime you can do something personal. Like you said, the only time I'm doing a virtual is if it's a training, like on something where virtual, but all my keynotes, they're all in person now, and they're all bringing those organizations together, because that's that human experience. So I really think that, I don't play the drums or do anything as fancy as what you do. But I'm just think it's amazing. And I like to hear that I'm actually in alignment with what you're saying. I think the personal attention and that personal touch is going to become even more valuable in the future. And like you said, with the employees, it's the same thing with engaging your employees. If they don't have that personal touch, I think that's what the problem with which a lot of people who went remote was, they went remote, and that sounded like they were saving money, and we could debate that all day long. But, for me, I have a remote staff now. I went remote with my agency in January, but we get together once a week. We do a lunch and learn where the team picks where they want to go, and we go off site and we get together and we see each other. We talk about our families, and that I meet once a week. And, it might cost me $200 or $300 for that meeting, but the impact it's done to help that personal connection, because you just can't do that remotely.
That's right. Yeah. And we need it. We thrive for it. We want it in our families. You want it with the connections with your children. We hope for that with the connection with our spouse. Why would we not carry that same thing into the workplace? And again, there are boundaries. I understand that. But again, it is the human experience. And we still live in a world where you could literally throw a stone and you will find a business that is dying to attract good talent. And if we have this stick in the mud mentality of this is the way it's always going to be and this is how I've done it, easy come, easy go, then have fun being a solo entrepreneur, or be okay with the revolving door of turnover that's going to constantly cost your organization thousands and thousands of dollars every time somebody leaves, or again when they mentally check out and then stay. These little deposits of trust, these little moments of connection, the drumsticks, if you will, Ford, right? Mr. Jensen, there's two pieces of wood that changed my life. And I think it's those little things done consistently over a long period of time that's what people remember. That's what people cherish. And we need more of it.
Well, I think I'll leave it there. Stick around right after the end. I just want to tell you, thank you so much for joining us on Fortify Live, and of course for the Business Growth Show podcast. Thanks again, Clint.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Fortify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.